Good afternoon, everybody. And my name is Ibrahim Achun. I'm a representative of Knox. First, I want to commend the minister for a lot of expansion and development that he mentioned. What I want to ask is, what are the plans to expand digital literacy in tertiary education, especially technological development? For the tools, most of the materials we talked about in terms of access, like the moderator did mention, access to those tools, you have them in exams. How can we ensure that they are advanced at tertiary institutions so that we will be able to learn about them at a very early time? The other one, we will want the minister to shed light on the Starlink issue, as our youth president talked about. There is a lot of noise on it in social media. We want to understand, as young people, is our future safe? Do we have our sovereignty intact? These are issues we will really be interested on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we'll just take one last question from this end, Khadijatu. So maybe some of the other questions we can actually discuss on them during our breakout sessions for lunch, please. And then we'll invite the Honorable Minister to respond to the questions. Honorable Minister, yes.
All right. Good afternoon. I am Adam Anjay, and my question here is regarding digitalization. When we talk about digitalization, I think we want to hear the cost of internet in the Gambia. When we talk about digitalization, we need the affordability for people to access it. So we have heard so many. It is important we recognize that, because many young people now are interested in digitalization, in the internet, but can they afford the cost of internet? That is very important. The minister have mentioned so many development and areas that the government is intervening in terms of to digitalize, the government, services. But if this digitalization is there and then we cannot access it, having the cost of it, I think it's a concern, and I think I want the government to intervene on that to make sure that it is affordable for the Gambian people. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Now I'll hand the baton over to the Honorable Minister to respond to these questions, if it can be a bit snappy. Yes.
Thank you for the chest-pounding questions. And I understand, it's understandable. But let me start with the last question on the issue of cost. When we are all out there, what we have in our hands, we measure and give it a value. Sometimes we call that value very expensive. It's costly. But let's remember, I mentioned here factors of production. How do you get that access? There are stakeholders that have invested, and they expect some returns on their investment. But the simple answer is this: we are working to ensure that we have a cheaper internet access for the people of this country. And remember, I said 17 years ago, we could have done a lot differently. But how many operators do we have? They have all invested a lot of money, and they are paying license fees and many things. They factor all this in their delivery of services. But we are working effectively on that. And I can assure you, gentlemen, be rest assured that before 2026, which is very important to us, we will make sure that you will see some impact. Now, there is also the question on private sector role for inclusive prosperity. That's a very, very important question. But the answer is short. When I came in, I looked at who are the operators, the stakeholders. Who are they? Who owns them? They are all Gambian companies, by the way. But those companies you see, who owns them? Who are the stakeholders? Are we in there? So I said, whatever we do for this sector now, it must be Gambianized. That's the principle. They can talk, and talks would be there. But just get your focus right, and that's what we have as a government. And a clear example of that is, if we want to give away any company whatsoever, let's look at ourselves as Gambians. Let the content be local content. It's very important, because in that you control the economy. You have it, it stays. For that reason, we are encouraging public-private partnership. We are giving opportunities to the Gambian companies, wherever you come from, regardless of whatsoever. So long as you're a company in this country and you're owned by Gambians, we are ready to promote you more. We don't want to be discriminatory, but we are observing the principle of discrimination based on an intelligible differential. That is not a bad discrimination. So to that question, I answer to say, PPP, we are promoting it. Minister of Finance, how I wish he was here, he would tell you what they are doing at the PPP level. Now, on digital literacy question, the answer is simple. We have what we call the TEE, Technology Enhanced Education Strategy, using ICTs. If you go to our websites, you will see what we are doing there. In order to make sure that from day one, from primary, basic, secondary to the higher level, advanced level, what is the strategy? That's already there in place. And access to the tools, cost of ownership of the tools you are using for that access. The government is reviewing what can we do. What form of taxes should now be lifted on some of those tools so that we have those right access? These are things that are going to be surprising to a number of you, but the strategic documents are already there, adopted. For the cross-cutting nature, that it must be cross-cutting. Within our ministry alone, today I can tell you, we have a strategy for agriculture through ICTs, strategy for health through ICTs, women and youth empowerment through ICTs. And these are key. Those strategic documents are there with outlined goals that we are gradually pushing through. But as I said before, the concept of gradualism is such that we don't want to be really constrained by the pace that is there. Now, on the issue of TVET, education and employment, some time ago, how I wish you had listened to the, maybe if you had the opportunity of listening to the higher education minister. How many TVET stations are we building as a government? Today you go to Wasu, just by Kuntauru, on the highway. That structure there, it will surprise a good number of the youth. Please, I advise you to go there. And many other parts of this country. We are building them to make sure that, like we said, the Germans got it right. And remember I said, no more government to say government must provide employment, but government must facilitate. Private sector should also facilitate, but the individual itself should facilitate. This is what the Germans have done, and they have got it right. Therein, it is not about the PhD or the masters or whatever you have. It is that competence you have, the skill. They look at their population and give them all the skills. They are the best engineers in the world today. So they say. I don't have the full statistics, but that's what they say. And they have some of the best, almost in every sphere of human activity, economic activity. So we're looking at that. The TVET system we are bringing into this country is a system that will be responsive to our needs for the next 10 years. That's an assurance I'm giving you. And lastly, on the dropped out issues and digital sovereignty. See, those of you who may remember, when I came in first, I called all Gambian software developers, young and old, application developers, into one particular hall, and I said to them, we are not saying no to outside software developers. We are not saying no to outside application developers. But we should only be able to bring them on board if you cannot do what we expect you to do for us. And we've already started that dialogue with them. That is something in the progressing. And in fact, for example, we have what you call the IFMIS system. You all know IFMIS system, how developed it in this country. And then a country like Rwanda came to learn from us here. I took somebody from here to Rwanda to teach them and to show them how to establish it through government, whatever, intergovernment dialogue. And Rwanda did it. Our IFIS system needs some upgrades. And Rwanda is proposing that they could do it at some millions of dollars. And I simply say, no, it's not possible. We are now going to be doing it here locally, and I can assure you we can do it. So, for us in technology, there is no dropout. Like Honorable Sabali said, just give them the opportunity, they will do it. And we are giving them that opportunity. Lastly, on digital sovereignty, please, digital sovereignty, I can tell you, in simple language and in simple answer. Some specific things raised, I would not have any answers for them for now. You will see the answers real time. But I can assure you and I can tell you, the president of this country, His Excellency Adam Barrow, understands the concept of digital sovereignty, and he knows what it entails. And that's something he will never sacrifice, because that's why we are all going. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister. I think the Honorable Minister kind of feels that I enjoy listening to him. When he says finally, you'll hear again in conclusion, lastly, and all of those things. So but nonetheless, a round of applause to the Honorable Minister and the panelists here as they move back to their seats, please. Thank you. Now, because we are way behind time, I would like to invite the next session of panelists, where the former Minister of Works, Honorable Bailamin Job, who's the founder of GAMWorks, will actually lead the discussions on the theme partnership in harnessing the Gambia's human capital and infrastructural resources for an inclusive leap to prosperity. So with the stakeholders' reflections on the topic as well is Mrs. Emily Sarr and Magistrate Mohamed Krubali from the Gambia Federation of Persons with Disability. Honorable Minister, Honorable Bailamin Job, please, you can join us on the podium. Mrs. Emily Sarr, yes, and Magistrate Mohamed Krubali from the GFD. Looks like he's not available, yes. And Honorable Minister, you can take the podium.
I have good morning here, but I think it's good afternoon, actually. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure and much appreciation to be invited to this national dialogue on harnessing human capital and infrastructure assets, which is one of the events of the upcoming 61st anniversary of independence. Since my time is limited, I will try to expedite my contribution. So let me start from the beginning by rewinding back to 18 February 1965 and by highlighting the following weaknesses with our human capital and infrastructure assets at the time. And I'm sure for some of you who are old enough, who may have been present, will know about this situation I'm going to describe. Our total population then was only 340,000 Gambians, 340. And our annual revenue for those from the Ministry of Finance, it was only $6.5 million at the time. Our human resources, aside our farmers then, we had one civil engineer in this country, one dentist, 6 cabinet members, and 4-man foreign service ministry. 4-man, there were 4 of them. And when it comes to roads, we had only 30 kilometers of tarred roads. 30 kilometers. No proper roads beyond Brikama. Just laterite and dirt roads. And the entire North Bank Road used to be shut every rainy season. No vehicles plying. And guess what? We had only taxi cars in this country and 3 minibuses. And I hope you believe this. We had one seaport which was called the Government Wharf. One riverboat which was called the Lady Ride. One airport with one airstrip. No fitting parliament building or national building, National Assembly building. One bank. I don't know if some of you will remember, there was only one bank. And 10 primary schools countrywide. 10 of them. 3 high schools. Gambia High School, St. Augustine's, and Armitage. That's it. Or that was it. One technical school and one bookstore, the Methodist bookstore. One fire station at Halfdye in Bathurst, in Banjul, one fire station. And 2 hospitals. The RVH, now called Francis Hospital, and Bansang Hospital. And one pharmacy. Oldfields, they used to call it. And one radio station that used to broadcast only 3 hours per day. And the coverage was just Banjul and some parts of the greater Banjul area. And in fact, in 1967, 2 years after independence, one American journalist named Buckley Rice visited the Gambia, and after which he wrote a book called Enter Gambia, the birth of an improbable nation, that we were not possible as a nation, that is. So, I am saying all this because I'm an optimist. If we move forward today, 6 decades after independence, the following now prevails. We have a population of about 2.4 million, according to the 2024 census. We now have a total annual revenue of above $320 million. Now compare it to the 6 we started with, okay? And we have now 23 cabinet members instead of 6. We have a foreign service now of 28 foreign missions, embassies and consulates. And we have a fitting National Assembly building for 58 National Assembly members. We have now more than 12 hotels. There were just 1 hotel before. 12. An airport equipped with international standards since 1997, with 3,600 meters of runway and a fitting terminal building. We have a bigger port, instead of the government wharf we used to have. And we have now 12 banks instead of one bank. They are now 12. And we have 1,034 schools countrywide. "19 bookstores now. And we have 10 fire stations. We used to have one. And this is countrywide. We now have 4 referral hospitals, 8 main health centers, and 16 smaller centers, and more than 200 mobile clinic units. We now have 13 pharmacies only in the Greater Banjul area. We used to have one, but only in the Greater Banjul area. Now we have 13. And we have 10 to 15 dentists, 10 to 15 estimate. And we have at least 14 or so civil engineering and architectural firms. When it comes to roads, we have identified 4,000 kilometers of primary, secondary, urban, and rural roads network. The primary roads is about 1,000 kilometers. And we have paved already about 800 kilometers of it. That's the primary. And I'm not talking just the North Bank Road to Farafenye, but now we have a North Bank Road paved from Barra to Pasemas. I don't know whether any of you know Pasemas, but it's at the end of the country. And the 500 kilometers of secondary roads, mainly gravel before, now either they are completed or under construction, like the Hakalang Road, which was inaugurated, I think, last year. We have the Salom, Kiang, and Kabada. How many of you know where Kabada is? I see only 2 hands. Or 3. Yeah. For the 200 kilometers of urban roads confined to the Banjul and the West Coast region, they have been addressed on the OIC project or other funding means. I mean, as a general description, in this country, we have 35 kilometers per every 100 square kilometer of this country, which is a density that provides connectivity and accessibility above the average in the sub-Saharan countries. We are above average. We now have, we used to have 1 radio station. We now have 20 radio stations. Only 1 is state-owned. We have 5 TV channels, not only radio, but 5 TV channels. 4 are privately owned. We have at least 4 daily newspapers we didn't have before, any. Publishing 5 times a week. And we have a large fleet of taxi cabs now, not 20. And minivans and buses plying in urban areas and in the country, everywhere. And lastly, if I may say, we have a fitting National Assembly building inaugurated since 2014. And we have this building you are in now, a conference center. We are not talking about anything like this. So, at least, we have come a long way from where we started. And we have to agree to that. And especially for those of you who are old enough to know this. That's true. She is our wife, the same age group. Yeah. So, given this noted journey that this country had undertaken for these 6 decades, please allow me to narrate a bit of my experiences of the lessons I have learned about the infrastructure sector. While I was the Director General of GAMWORKS for 8 years, and while I was a minister of the Ministry of Transport, Works and Infrastructure for 5 years. Not to mention, while as a private consultant in few other projects and studies. GAMWORKS was between 1993 and 2001 when I was there. It's still there. GAMWORKS was founded as a development agency funded by the World Bank and government of the Gambia to deliver rapidly infrastructure assets, and in the process to create employment and to enable the building of local capacity in the construction industry. Now, because of we had very clear operating procedures and standards, the agency was able to deliver about 35 to 40 projects per year. We came out to be about 300 projects in 8 years. I believe one of the main reasons of that good performance and the transparency of the agency, aside the clear procedures and standards, was because of the staffs were well paid. They were well paid. That was the magic of GAMWORKS at the time. The other experience GAMWORKS, which I still remember, and was a study on the construction industry for infrastructure. It was conducted in 1999 using a joint venture of international and local consultants. Now, these were the findings then. The study showed that 80 to 90% of total investments per year in this country were on buildings and civil works, on infrastructure. 80 to 90% of what we invest on a yearly basis in this country. There were other investments, but the main investments were related to construction in one way or the other. That was number one. Number two, the study also found that the local construction industry, contracts and consultants combined, only accessed less than 5% of the noted investment transactions at that time. That we were on the sidelines, the local industry. Number three, that the local construction industry was very disorganized and mostly informal. That's the local one. And number four, that the local banks in this country were not supportive and were mostly causing bankruptcy of local contractors in one way or the other, because sometimes receiving their payment took time when they were already issued with cash advancements from these banks. And before they can get those advances, they usually used to tender collaterals, which sometimes they can never recover again. And the fifth thing we found out, that mostly the local consultants were working in silos. We are not open to joint ventures, and therefore could not lead big or complex projects. They don't want to come together. In fact, the most individualistic people in this country are educated. They cannot cooperate. They are always arguing, and each feeling very big. They cannot talk to each other. Both at the individual level, also as companies. And the sixth thing they found out, lastly, that externally funded projects did not favor the local industry. And most of our projects were being externally funded. But they come with their documents and stipulating that they have to bring external consultants and even hire contractors from the outside. The thing I remember, that the GANWORKS agency tried to solve some of these problems. They even, facilitated the creation of two associations. One was called GACON, which was the Gambia Association of Contractors, and the other was the Gambia Association of Consultants. But I cannot say whether these two associations are still existing or functioning, which comes to my previous statement that our professionals in this country are very proud people who have not decided to cooperate and work with each other. Well, with regards to the Ministry of Transport, which I was there from 2017 to 2022. As the new minister in 2017, the first surprising experience I had at the time, which is still memorable, was receiving a copy of a presidential executive order at the time, addressed to the following state-owned enterprises, that is the Gambia Ports Authority, the Gambia Maritime Association, the Gambia Civil Association, and the National Road Association, NRA, asking them to move from his office, the office of the president, all of them, or under the office of the president, to the Ministry of Transport, Works and Infrastructure, where they belong. So it means at that time, all these technical ministries were under the office of the president. And that was one of his first orders, to kick them out. Implementing that order was a big challenge at the time. But a bigger and time-consuming challenge was transforming the ministry from a political bureau into a veritable technical institution by having necessary technical operating procedures and standards and having the necessary equipment. There were few desktops and laptops around then, and there was no network, minister, for you to learn. The whole ministry had no network. They were just standalones and laptops and all that. So having a network became a priority. Then we we started doing proper planning, scheduling, evaluating projects, and having regular meetings, not only within the ministry, but with the state-owned enterprises, which soon had positive impact on performance. Now, I'll tell you something about meetings which I've learned, not only locally here, but working in the international. Somebody did study and arrive at a conclusion that when you are engaged in any project, the success of that project depends on how many meetings you had. Empirically established. That the more meetings you have, the more interactions you have as a group ensures the success of that project. And that's what we were having. Now, because, as you said, my time, let me just conclude very quickly. By way of concluding, let me state that we face challenges. We still face challenges in human capacity and in infrastructure assets. We continue to have infrastructure deficits in power supply, in transportation, water supply, including irrigations, as mentioned by the regional dialogue, telecommunication and digital infrastructure, which the minister has already elaborated in education and health facilities. We must address the deficits to meet our development needs and for prosperity. Given our continuously increasing population, now 2.4 million, and given the rising expectations of our young population, who are in the majority, 65% I learned today, and mainly living in the urban areas. My proposals are as follows. One, we must identify, quantify, and plan over a period to address the infrastructure deficits in all sectors and in a coordinated manner. I hope this is captured during the discussions and the reports of this forum. The second one is one that I forced myself to bring up. We all know that the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs is one of the most struggling ministries in this country, and in fact in all other countries, because of their difficulty or their difficult role in managing national annual budgets of expenditures in all sectors. Given this responsibility, I totally agree with their efforts to increase local income generation strategies through the GRA, for example. Not only to be able to fund public sector operations, but also to fund the development projects. This strategy has resulted already into implementation of the Banjul project, the roads project in Hakalang, Keankou, Jimbala, Kabada. It's their efforts. Local funds funded these projects. I, however, in my opinion, I totally disagree with one of the Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs' recent income generating strategies, which involves devolving or leasing out vital national infrastructure assets, as they did with the Senegambia and the ports, Gambia ports. I believe there can be no private enterprise, for example, and much less a country which can be viable or have prosperity by leasing out or losing control of vital national infrastructure assets. I hope this forum will examine this strategy closely and deliberate frankly on its merits or drawbacks. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. You can still have a seat. standing behind the former Minister, I know it was a bit intimidating behind him, but I wasn't even at some point listening to him. I was looking at the paper, how far he's gone in making his deliberations, but sorry. Now we've heard from him. He has actually taken us down memory lane as to what existed in terms of infrastructure before, the efforts that have been there, that are actually there, but also in terms of what needs to be done for recommendation. I'll invite Mrs. Emily Sarr to actually take us through as a reflection on the aspect of partnership based on what the Honorable Minister has actually mentioned. Please, ma'am. Okay, sure, you can.
Well, he's really taking us down through memory lane. The last time someone made that, what is this, reflection, going through history, he ended with a question. And this was in India. The old man looked at the gathering and said, okay, now tell me, if this is not development, then what is development? After taking them through, history. Okay. I'm here on behalf of the Women's Advocacy Group. You have already introduced me, Honorable Chair. Let me observe or salute the dignitaries, the excellencies here present, the distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I don't want to begin without expressing gratitude, because we are indeed very grateful that we were invited to offer our reflections on this topic, which is harnessing the Gambia's human capital and infrastructure resources for an inclusive leap to prosperity. And because of the work we are engaged in, we really feel it's an honor of a lifetime, and we want to express our gratitude. I in particular, on behalf of the WBAG. Now, as we commemorate 60 years of independence, we are reminded that our nation's true wealth lies in its people. Our greatest asset is our human capital, the resilience, talent, and enterprise of Gambians. An inclusive leap to prosperity requires that we harness this potential deliberately. Deliberately, I had that word coming from you. Deliberately, yeah, intentionally. No country achieves sustained growth when part of its productive population remains underutilized. Across the Gambia, women in business contribute meaningfully to local markets and national value chains. They create employment, stabilize households, and sustain communities. Yet they remain constrained from scaling and competing fully in higher levels of opportunity. The Women's Business Advocacy Group was established to help address this gap, working collaboratively with government, private sectors, and development partners to promote supplier diversity and strengthen inclusive procurement systems. We are grateful for the constructive partnerships we have enjoyed with the International Trade Center, the United Nations Development Program, the Ministry of Gender, Children, and Social Welfare, the Gambia Public Procurement Authority, that's the GPPA, the Gambia Investment and Export Promotion Agency, and the Gambia Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the GCCI, which serves as host to the association during these formative years. What began as a small initiative under GCCI has grown to a respectable platform that has contributed meaningfully to national dialogue and policy development, including our collective role in shaping the draft gender-responsive procurement policy now being advanced to the Ministry of Gender. While our work addresses barriers across the broader market ecosystems, we have placed particular strategic focus on public procurement as a high impact lever for inclusion and enterprise growth. Public procurement is not merely administrative. It is part of our national institutional infrastructure that directs public investment, shapes markets, and determines who participate in structured growth. This is why we are so preoccupied with it. The GPPA Act 2022, notably Section 33 on domestic preference, represents meaningful progress in promoting local participation. Building on this foundation, continued engagement around structured inclusion benchmarks for women and underrepresented groups, youth and persons with disability, represents a constructive next step in broadening participation. And let me tell you, most of our advocacy energies and stresses have been around this benchmark. Our initial advocacy referenced a 30% benchmark in line with international inclusion frameworks. Through constructive dialogue and technical consultation, a phased implementation model has emerged, establishing realistic entry points today while creating a pathway for expanded participation as enterprise capacity and market readiness continue to grow. And as we speak, that target, which can't be 30%, from our discussion, has to be a starting target, has been, the core of our arguments and our debates. Importantly, inclusion does not lower standards. During the COVID period, when women were encouraged to participate in supply chains, they formed consortia to meet volume requirements, complied fully with procurement rules, and delivered reliably. Standards remain unchanged. What shifted was access, and performance followed. This is not preference. It is about unlocking productive capacity, deepening competition, and strengthening our national economic foundations. Furthermore, the National Development Plan, YIRIWA 23 to 27, explicitly recognizes structured measures in public procurement under the empowerment and social inclusion pillar as key enablers of economic empowerment. WBAG's advocacy is therefore not parallel to national reform. It is directly aligned with support of the government and as articulated in the NDP, and therefore supports government's policy direction. Alongside procurement reform, we recognize that in today's economy, market access increasingly expands into digital platforms. More women and youths are registering businesses online and engaging in e-commerce to reach regional and global markets. Through partnership with the Gambia Women's Chamber of Commerce, we support enterprise readiness so that women-owned businesses are equipped to compete effectively, whether in structured procurement systems or evolving digital marketplace. As we look ahead, let us harness our human capital and strengthen the national institutional infrastructure that enables enterprise to thrive so that our inclusive leap to prosperity is deliberate, structured, and sustained, and no productive potential is left untapped. WBAG has made its recommendation. We hope that the Gambian people and the government will hear us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Emily Sarr from the Women Business Advisory Group. At this juncture, I'll throw back the mic to the audience for your contributions on the topic, which states partnership in harnessing the Gambia's human capital and infrastructural resources for an inclusive leap to prosperity. So now these contributions are the only one between us and lunch. Yes, we can. The faster we are able to do it, the faster we could go for lunch. Yes. Ali, yes.
Yeah, there's one here, PS. Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Mort Seka, and my question is directed to Doyen Job. Doyen, I know we've been, we are very proud of your contribution in the sector, but I also see a gap that I would want to pick your brain on, and this is the underutilization of the River Gambia. What is your advice on this? We are leaving a substantial and a very important area in the development of this country, and it looks like it has been ignored for some time. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have another one? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I want to add my voice to P.S. Seka's commendation of Bailamin. Say it's one of the finest presentations I've ever heard. Thank you for teaching us. And indeed, we need to be taught. And I'm glad that we have a platform like this, because me and my youths, back then when we had symposia, we invited the Dr. Sajatars, the Halifa Salas, Badara Jus, but now we invite ourselves to talk to ourselves. And definitely, I think there is room to listen to the elderly. So thank you for that flashback. Regarding the key theme here, harnessing human capital infrastructure. We know this government in particular has invested in an unprecedented way in generating new infrastructure. How much jobs were created? I know it's not as much as we would want to. Everybody has complained about youth unemployment. And one of the key factors is our attitude as young people. What is your advice? What are the solutions? I know we have young people coming from Benin to come and work here. What is the solution? Maybe you have a magic wand. On your very bold criticism of the asset licensure, I think it's quite interesting. I used to hold similar views when I was in the opposition. Now it's not my business to criticize government. I hope I can be honest. But, and this is a big but, we know the port issue, for instance. Not much was invested. But again, back to attitude. I'm not receiving any calls from the diaspora again, telling me my goods are in a container waiting. You know better than me the ERP and the divestiture programs. What was the main issue, if you ask me? Again, attitude. This whole thing of what belongs to everybody, belonging to nobody. Just throwing some thoughts out there, but thank you again for a brilliant presentation.
Thank you. Can we have two more? Yes, there is one behind there. You can make it snappy before the secundas will come for me.
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Alhaji Bafode Jabi, Council of Elders, KM. Be kontonna Allah kibari nyimami aliya nati kabirin kul kuma seta damin kana bula bila waya itandi ko Gambia fulota la jambale to woto nte mbali jeyla la do ko la bari lefta ngamuru din le kan domandi pour ye nyimmo yale Gambia stati dami anin kana bula bila kene bale keta woto dindingol ye song ye lay fanna ko fen natata tara Gambia la samalomo ni sonda abe kenola la katambi nyi sanji taworo nin kilongo moli kato minke wo alfal milio kata nyimma ke mbe jeyla mbetendola bar say atuta dindingol lel bulu aliye song aliye gama la bankola ko altelle tamu adali ba sambano la le al dia nyami Gambe sula de fenfennalu ba kenola le wo total tellel bulu man sakundansi min fono wolmo fanaliye bulo dun dinnowul koto dami yalon ko dinnowul ta kenole faye ba kata kanne de bari hanbi suka borono nyawnye ka dafa busola be man sakunda fana dani lola bari do ko warama dinnowul lomo de nga konyi ko bula nga sonde biji bula nga ñim programme jama bula nga ñaatilim na banko do ko wala woten na banko asamba ñaato de min sontan gemuta moman intelligent katambia Gambia din Gambian kola na banko do ya da bar Gambia ding intelligentale bar fo nga song nga do ko ke nga gemun na banko la nkanan na mire ala mo la banko kan fem nyaabe wala banko ka bebe na janne ni sonda ni nga amuta isi kuke no molle be wulla nang be mili employé la na banko kan jang bar fo nga sonne de adu kebal woliye takele kandu nyile min fo Gambia start dami ñina history a kumata bage mol ka alla moy yalo Gambia start min tole anim bimbe dami woto ala min dinna nin altali sonta molle be bola de la bankol kay minala wol ba kan ne ko ba be mbulo be laari nyoka na wala ba be do ku ke ba samba kay la banko ka adun kana so wala nan kana na banko ke bayoti am kumo man so ne bari mbe nyin da fa kilum so la pour ka di dinde wala ndeni telom ba ni ko karo na lota ni tata santo sateto karo tilifolo alifalle ko lombide karo lotale bartil tannin nano e baji ndingol jale be don nay be kontanira ni nyin ka karo lota lu nyumale ita fonole ke balle ko wono woto mili kunullo e bali advice la assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi
wabarakatuh. Mabinta will take that last one.
Good afternoon everyone. So I'm Aissatou AB Jallow and I'm representing women and girls in STEM, the Gambia. So I want to share a little about the theme of this year's National Dialogue. So to me, when we talk about harnessing human capital, we're talking about investing in young people, especially women and girls. And I'm going to tell you something. The biggest mistake we could make as a nation is undermining the capabilities of women and girls as innovators and problem solvers. And coming to the other part, which is infrastructure. So when we talk about infrastructure, what comes to our mind is road, buildings, right? And then taking you back to Antifatu Jana's, I guess it's Antifatu Jana's presentation on the regional dialogue, we realized that one of the main issues that we had was agricultural mechanization, right? Post-harvest losses. And when we talk about infrastructure, I'm going to tell you that infrastructure is not just road and building. Infrastructure is also agricultural machinery. It is also local manufacturing capabilities and any system that improves productivity. So I want us to take note as a nation and as a government that if we prioritize agricultural machinery as infrastructure, as the way we prioritize roads and buildings, that is the only time we will be able to solve the issue of post-harvest losses and then agricultural issues. Because when we look at it, we realize that most of the times we're developing the infrastructure, which is building roads, a lot of roads, right? A lot of new buildings. But if we were to prioritize agricultural machinery as much as we prioritize roads, we will not have this issue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aissatou. Now we'll hand over to the Honorable Minister to respond to the questions.
I'll do it fast because then you're looking at it. Okay. Let me first deal with the first question of Mr. Seka about the underutilization of the Gambia River. Frankly, I think this is almost like a tragedy, if you ask me. It should be one of the priorities for a long time, not even in this government, since the first government. From a bigger point of view, though, we can look at the river basin itself, which has potential for hydroelectric power generation and irrigation. We have not been doing very well in the bigger picture, although there is this OMVG and still struggling. But I think they have a problem of having the right budget to do the right studies and have the right personnel. And it has been around for a long time. It should have done more than what have been done. Now, with regards to our country, you know, there are two prongs of the issue, because we knew all along that by building the roads we are building, the time span of their usefulness will not be too long because of the heavy traffic of loads, heavy loads. But if we had a river transport system with barges that could be, you know, carrying these heavy loads, the longevity of our roads will almost double. And we will be transporting bulky goods cheaper, much, much cheaper. But we have been having here and there proposals, project concepts, but we have not been able to do much. And I think it's because we are using the traditional way of implementing projects by going around to the traditional donors, multinational, or multilateral or bilateral. And this takes time. And it's just going to be like the Lamin Koto Pasemas Road, which we built, which took 40 years. 40 years to really implement this project, because we were going through the traditional way, going to our traditional donors to ask them for the funds. Now, Mr. Sek, I'm sure you are quite au fait with what is going now in small paces, but we should augment this approach, this strategy, using local funds. Now, why it is important? Because before we used to have this concept that when we have a project concept and it's 100 million, then we start having cold feet, cannot move forward. But we want to, we were trying to convince government that that 100 million is not what we are going to spend now. We can say, let's do the project in 10 years. And every year, finance give us this much. I mean, the duration of a project determines whether it is viable in this Gambia or not. If it's expensive, let's spread it out. Eritrea built a dam. And everybody, when they started, said it's not going to happen. And there were a lot of opposition. They have built the dam, but it took 40 years, locally. They did it locally. So the river, we can do the same, to develop it. We wanted to build a wharf in Kour and a depot in Basse, you know, and all that. But the monies that we were quoting seems big, and then the finance people say, no, this is not possible. But let's do it in 10 years. Please. Then there was the thing about the youth unemployment. That is a very sensitive topic and very, very important. And it's very difficult. If we are having the same mindset and using the same methods as we do things. I mean, in GAMWorks, we experience a lot of employment creation at that time. And the only way that it is going to be possible and effective is by using local funds to build some of these projects. We have to be very serious about coming with strategy to increase the GRA inflows, because that's the way we can generate employment for our people without constraints, without IMF, without World Bank or whatever coming to tell us that you can do this or you can do that. And it's faster to implement. When projects are funded locally, they are faster. the usual traditional way will take 10 years, 5 years, and several meetings before you break the ground. So I think if you really want to be serious about youth employment and employment generation, we have to really be serious about generating funds locally, which we can do. Now we are over $320 million. Yeah, we have to look at what we are spending that money on now and pick some priorities from them, like youth employment. Then there was a little bit of, allusion to what I said about the development of some of our assets. And I know one of the avenues being used is this notion of PPP. And PPP is when you share with the private sector. But PPP has been very effective and with a lot of impact in the developed world. In the developed world, when government and private sector work hand in hand. Because what comes out as benefits are invested there. But PPP in our so-called world, the private sector is usually an external company. And what they realize is usually not invested in the country. So PPP has different impacts. In the developed world, it works fine. But here, PPP has not been very, effective. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, lunch is served. Lunch is 45 minutes. You are expected to be back by 3:10. Thank you. It's the same place you had breakfast in the morning.